style of questions and everything. So I'm gonna give you all about a minute to try to solve this, and then I'll show you how to solve it. Okay, so I think that's a bit long enough. Bhumi, can you spotlight the other camera?
What you can do is stop this share of the screen right now, and I'll spotlight you.
Okay. Okay, so this first question is an SAT word problem and an systems of equations. So this requires for us to create an equation. So what you will get for these type of problems is a paragraph like this. And what you want to do as the first thing is you want to first look at the answers and see what you're trying to find. Are you trying to find an expression or an equation? So for question number 1, we were trying to find an equation.
Can you share that other screen? Let's see if we do side by side, maybe the question and then this. Let's see. Can you share the screen, the question? Let me add a spotlight and see if that works. I think, yeah, that should be okay. Is that fine with you guys? If at all, if there's an issue, then let me know. Yeah, you can go ahead maybe. If they do not see it, they'll let you know. Maybe they'll raise your hand or they'll unmute themselves and let you know.
Okay, so for this first question, as you can see, we're looking for an expression. And so for this, what we would want to do is, so we want to first figure out which parts of the question are important. And so out of this, the important parts are the 401, I'll write it bigger, are the 401 electoral college votes for candidates James Blaine and Grover Cleveland. So 401 equals James plus Clover. And then the number of electoral votes Blaine received, I guess instead of J, it would be a B. Instead of C would be, yeah. And then the number of electoral college votes Blaine received was 37 fewer than the number that Cleveland received. So Blaine received 37 fewer. So Clover, or Cleveland minus 37 is the number of votes Clover or Blaine received. So these would be the two equations, which would be B plus C equals 401 and C minus 37 equals B, which would be C, or answer choice C. Okay, so now we're gonna move on to
If they have any questions, they can raise their hand.
now we're gonna move on to question 2. This one will require us to figure out what the value of P for the unknown. I'll give you all about a minute. Okay, so for these type of problems, usually you're gonna be given a word or a phrase, and you're gonna have to translate that into a symbolic form or an equation. But for this question, they already gave it to you in a symbolic form, so you don't really need to do any of that. So for this one, we have 2p plus 6 equals 8 plus 7p. And so what we'd want to do is we would want to get the variable, which would be p, on one side of the equation and the constant on the other. So to do that, we'd subtract 2p from both sides. That would give us 5p plus 8 equals 6. Subtract 8 from both sides. Negative 2 equals 5 times p. And then what we would want to do is we want to divide both sides by 5. Negative 2 over 5 equals p, which would give us an answer choice of B. The answer is B. And so those were relatively simple questions. Those were some of the most simple questions on this SAT. At least we are going to get into much harder ones.
The link is again in the chat. If anyone joined us later, the link is there in the chat. They can click on it and open the question.
Okay.
There's some question Aryan has. You can unmute yourself and ask the question, Aryan.
I can't find the paper or the link to the questions.
Can you see the chat over here? I mean, in the chat, there is a link.
I don't see it.
You don't see it.
It should be fine. I am sharing the question which we're working on.
Okay. Can anyone else see the chat? I mean, the link in the chat. Can you just let us know? Anyone unmute yourself and let us know? I mean, or is there some issue that
I can see it.
you can see it? Okay.
Okay, so for question 3, you're given any linear equation and you have to figure out what graph represents it. So I'm going to give you a few seconds. This one should be pretty easy. Okay, so for this one, what information are we given? Well, we're given that y equals mx plus 3, and m is a positive constant. So m is positive. So y equals mx plus 3 is the slope of a normal line, where m is the slope and the constant is the y-intercept. So if you would substitute 0 in for x, you'd find out that y would equal 3. So that means that when x is 0, y is 3. Meaning that out of the answer choices A, B, C, and D, we can eliminate answer choice B and answer choice D just because their y-intercept is -3 and not +3. And then the second part of the question, where it says m is a positive constant, tells us that the slope is positive, which would give us the answer of C. Okay. This question is a little bit more difficult. This one will involve a little bit of algebra. I'll give you about a minute for that one. Okay, so for this one, we're given the equation y equals the square root of hg over x. And we're asked to find h in terms of g, x, or y. So we have to get h by itself. So for these type of questions, whatever you do to one side of the equation, you have to do the other. So to do the opposite of a square root, we have to square both sides. So that gives us y squared equals hg over x. Okay? And then we do, and then the next thing you do, according to order of operations, which is PEMDAS, is you would get rid of the division here. So you multiply both sides by x, and that will give you xy squared equals hg. And then to get h by itself, you divide both sides by g, which will give you xy squared over g equals h. Which would be answer choice D. All
Kushal,
right.
for each and every question, you need to ask them if they have any question. If they raise hand or they ask something, you need to answer them.
Guys, do you all have any questions? If you have any questions for any problems, you can just unmute and ask. So now on to question 5, where we're given the absolute value of x minus 1 equals 8. If x is a solution to a given equation, what is the possible value of x minus 1? And so I'll give you about a minute to solve this, and then I'll show you how I would solve this. Or a good way to solve this. Okay, so for this one, what we are doing is absolute value. So absolute value basically takes whatever number and makes it positive. So the absolute value of a number is the distance between 0 and that number on the number line. So if it would be -4, it's 4 units away. If it's 3, then it's 3 units away. And so the absolute value of A equals A if A is greater than 0, and the absolute value of A is negative A if A is less than 0. And you can change these into regular expressions. And let me show you how to do that. So what you do for x minus 1 equals 8, you do x minus 1 equals 8. And the other one you do would be negative x minus 1 equals 8. And so basically, you're multiplying whatever's in the absolute value by -1 to get the other answer. And so if we solve the first one, we would get x equals 9, which is not one of the answers. And if we solve the second one, we would get negative x plus 1 equals 8. We subtract 1 from both sides. So we get negative x equals 7. And we would get x equals -7. Or wait, no, sorry, that's wrong. We would add 1 or sorry, I messed that up. The answer choice to this one should be A, which is -8. I accidentally messed that up. Sorry. Because the reason why is x is -7, right? But it asks, what is a possible value of x minus 1? So we have our two answer choices, which is x equals 9 and x equals -7. But the question doesn't ask for x. It asks for x minus 1. So the two possible answer choices could be 8 and -8. Which would get us the answer of A. So I actually did do this correctly. It's just that the question didn't ask for x. It asked for x minus 1. So make sure you read what's in the question. It might not always ask for x. It might ask for x minus 1 or x plus 3 or something like that. So even though it was the answer choices were 9 or -7 for x, it didn't ask for x. Any questions? Okay, so now we're on the next question. So the graph of linear function is shown. Which equation defines f? So I'll give you a few seconds. Okay, so for this question, it is standard coordinate geometry. So equation of line is y equals mx plus b. B is the point where it crosses the y-axis or the y-intercept. Y-intercept is where x is 0, x-intercept is where y is 0, slope is 9, and all that. And so for this one, it asks which equation defines f. And so f of x equals y. And so using this, we know that b is the point that crosses the y-axis. And so in this graph, it crosses the y-axis at -8. So we know that b has to be -8. We are still missing m. So m is the slope. And so slope you calculate by using rise over run, which is y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. And y2 is the y value of the second coordinate, and x2 is x value of the second coordinate, etc., etc. And so using that formula, we would be able to figure out that, well, let's use 2 points. One of the points is 4, -2, and another point on the graph is 0, -8. And so using this formula, y2 to -2 minus y1, which is -8. So -2 minus -8, which would make it +8, over x2, which is 4 minus x1 is 0. -2 plus 8 is 6 over 4, which simplifies into 3 over 2, which gives us the slope. So y equals 3 over 2x minus 8, which gets us the answer of A. Any questions? All right, question 7. It gives us a model where we have to figure out or create a systems equation to solve for what they're asking. So I'll give you a minute. Okay, so for this one, we're told that the total cost for conducting is $5,000. And that the line shows the possible combinations. And so we're given the slope of a line and all of that, but we don't even need all that. What we just need to see is the highest points reached. So 125 phone surveys has to equal $5,000, because that means all of the money is just being spent on phone surveys. And we know that 200 mail surveys is also $5,000. And so given that, we're asked to find what is the cost for each phone survey conducted. So we don't need this, we just need this. So 5,000 over 125 gives us sorry. 40. Because 125 times 4 is 500, and then you have the z here, so it's 40, which would give us C. All right, question 8. With expression is equivalent to 5x cubed minus 2x plus 1 minus, and then parentheses, 2x cubed plus 2x plus 1. I'll give you a minute. Try to solve it. Okay, so for this one, we're basically just simplifying the expression. So we'll just use PEMDAS. So, or something close to it. So you have 5x cubed minus 2x plus 1 in parentheses minus 2x cubed plus 2x plus 1. And so the first thing you do is you distribute this negative. So you have 5x cubed minus 2x plus 1, and then you distribute this negative within the parentheses, which will get you minus 2x cubed. And then instead of plus 2x, this would become minus 2x. And then instead of plus 1, it would become minus 1, because you're multiplying all of these terms inside the parentheses by negative 1. So you can get rid of this. And so you have 5x cubed minus 2x cubed, which gets you 3x cubed. And then negative 2x minus 2x is negative 4x. And then positive 1 minus 1 is just 0. So that would be 3x cubed minus 4x. Which is answer choice C. All right, question 9. So we're given two triangles and we have to prove that they are congruent to each other. So I'll give you a minute to read through it. Okay, so for this one, we have congruent triangles, and so, or similar triangles. And so, the different ways we can prove congruent triangles is that ratios of corresponding sides are equal. So for this one, A is equal to D, or A over D should equal B over E, which should also equal C over F. The alternative way is like this, where one triangle is a shrunken down version of the other triangle, but it means that, and then this other one, type C, is also essentially the same thing. It's just that instead of it being like this, it's flipped across both axes. And what you'll notice in all of these is that the angle measures are the same. So this is 53, this is a 53, this is 32, this is 32, and this is 95. And so for question 9, we're given ABC. I should probably just draw these. 35, 35, A, B, C, and triangle EFD. E, F, D. And these are both 35. And it asks, which of the information would we need? Well, what does first one say? The measures of ACB and DFE are equal. So the measures of ACB, so this angle right here, is equal to DFE. So that would be this angle. That's option 1. But the thing is, we don't need this information because we already know this information just given what we already have. Because the angles in a triangle always add up to 180. And since we're given 2 of the angles in both triangles, we already know this. So we don't need to, this information doesn't give us anything we don't already know. And so this cannot be used to prove that. So it can't be A. B, the lengths of BC, which is this one, and EF, which is this one, are equal. And so if BC and EF are equal, then that would mean that, well, let's flip this triangle. Well, actually, I don't really need to because this is an equilateral or the isosceles triangle where 2 of the angles are the exact same. So that for these type of triangles, you don't actually need to do all that because you know that this and this are equal. Or this and this are also equal. So it doesn't matter if it said D and F or E and F and C and B and A and C because they would always be equal. So that means that B is correct. And then C, lengths of AC and DE. So that's this and this. Those don't have to be equal. They're not the same. So it can't be C. And D, no additional information to prove that they're congruent. Well, the thing is that the triangles, there would be no additional information needed to prove that they're similar triangles, but to prove that they're congruent triangles. So congruent triangles means the same lengths and same angles. So since we have no information about the lengths, we actually do need additional information. So B is the right answer to that. All right, question 10. Okay, so for question 10, we're given an exponent problem. And so for exponents, this is generally how you solve them. So a to the x times a to the y is a to the x plus y. A to the x over a to the y is a to the x minus y. A to the x to the power of y is a to the x times y. And then a to the x, b to the y, c to the z, and all of that to the power of w is a to the x times w times b to the y times w times c to the z times w. Not see that. So, using those rules, we're given y to the 1 over 8 times y to the 3 over 4 to the power of 3 over 2. And so, using these rules, first we need to use PEMDAS, and we need to realize that we need to do this part first. So, y to the 3 over 4 to the times the power. So that's the same as rule number 3, which is a to the x to the power of y equals a to the xy. So this is just y to the 3/4 times 3 over 2. Which would just be y to, well, first let's just make these similar. This would become 4, this would become 6. So that's 6 over 4 times 3 over 4. Which is just y to the 9 over 8. And then you'd use the first one, which is a to the x times a to the y is a to the x plus y. So this would be this plus 1 over 8, which is just y to the 10 over 8, which is just y to the 5 over 4, which, well, now we have to just translate this into square root. So which we get the 4th root of y to the 5th, which would get us a as our answer choice.
Pushi, if they have any questions, they can ask.
I know. All right, and then for question 11, we're given sine 3 pi over 4, and we're asked to try to find its value. So for this one, there's not really a good formula. This one is a little bit more memorization. So this one actually involves the unit circle, which is this. And so basically, how this one actually works is that we're trying to find sine 3 pi over 4. And so 180 degrees is pi. So half of pi is 90 degrees. So 3 over 4 of pi is 135 degrees. And we're asked to find sine, which is the right number, which would be root 2 over 2. And so that would be answer choice C, root 2 over 2. There's not much you can do for this one, it's just memorization of the unit circle. So 11 is C. All right, 12. we're asked, what is the graph of the equation y 2 to the negative x plus 1? So I'll give you a minute. Okay, so for this one, what I would recommend you do for these where they give you the graph is plug in 0 for x, because that will give you the y-intercept. So we have 2 to the negative x plus 1. If we plug in 0, we would get 2 to the 0th power plus 1. Anything in the 0th power is just 1 plus 1, which would get us a y-intercept of 0, 2, where the x value is 0 and the y value is 2. Which means that out of our answer choices from A, B, C, and D, it can't be B because it doesn't have a y-intercept of 0, 2. And so the next thing we would want to do is figure out, okay, what happens when x approaches infinity or negative infinity or such? And so if we plug in a really big value for x, so let's say 2 to the power of negative 999 plus 1. Well, anything to the power of a really big negative number is almost 0. It's not 0, but it's very close to it. So this would be 0 plus 1, or approximately 0 plus 1, which would tell us that as this equation approaches infinity, the value would actually approach 1, which tells us, which the only one of these graphs where the value is approaching 1 is A. Because for B, it's approaching 0. For C, it's approaching 3. And for D, it never reaches infinity. Any questions? Okay. So for question 13, we just have to make an equation. I'll give you a minute. Okay, so for this one, we know that 10 of the plants are planted in a garden. 10 is the start. And then the number of plants increased by 140% every year. So increase of 140%. And this one asks, which of the following models the estimated number of plants T years after 2005? And so for these questions, this, you'd have the start, or these exponential type questions, you have the start times 1 plus whatever the increases to the power of time. And you do 1 plus the increase because you are starting at 10. If you didn't do this, then if your t value is like 0 years, then you wouldn't really, you'd get basically 0. So the equation for this would be 10, and then 1 plus, well, when we convert 140% into a decimal, it would be 1.4. So 1 plus 1.4 to the power of t. T is the number of years. And so 10 times 2.4 power of t, which would get us an answer of D. Any questions? All right, question 14. It shows a graph of a function f. I'll give you a minute. Okay, so for this one, it gives us the graph of f of x, and it asks us to find the y-intercept of the graph of y equals 2x, f of x plus 2. So for this one, what you'd want to do is, it's asking for the y-intercept. So the y-intercept is when x is 0. So we have to find y equals f of, and then for x we substitute 0 plus 2, y equals f of 2. And so basically we just have to find f of 2, which is 3. So 0, 3, which gets us an answer of A. Basically what we did is we just shifted the graph to the left 2 units. If this was f of x minus 2, we would be shifting the graph to the right 2 units. Any questions? Give you a minute to work on number 15. All right, so for this one, we're given a systems of equations where there are 2 unknowns, x and y. So there are 2 ways we can solve systems of equations. We can either substitute or plug in, and an example would be x is 2y minus 1, y is 3x plus 3, and we just plug in 2y minus 1 for x in this equation, which would just get us 3 times 2x minus 1 plus 3. And so that's one way we can solve these. And the other way is variables on the same side, and that's elimination. And so if we have like 2x plus 3y equals 4 and 5x plus 6y equals 7, well, we would have to make sure that there's the same number of one of the variables. So we would multiply the second equation by 2, and we would get 10x plus 12y equals 14. And the top equation we multiply by 5, which would get us 10x plus 15y equals 20. And then we can just subtract the bottom from the top, which would just get us 3y equals 6 and y equals 2. So those are the two ways we can solve these type of questions. And then so for this one, it says one of the two equations is 2x plus 2y equals 2. And it says the system has no solution. And so for a system to have no solution, the lines must be parallel. If they were perpendicular or anything else, they will have one solution at some point, but they must be parallel and they cannot be equal. So they can't just be the same exact line, because that would mean all real solutions. And so looking at the answer choices, the only one that is parallel would be answer choice A. Okay. And then now we get into grid-in problems. And so for grid-in problems, so before we start the grid-in problems, I just want to show that there's many ways you can grid in. You can do it 1 over 2.5. You can use fractions or decimals. You can have it on the left line, you can have it in the middle line, or you can have it on the right line. But if you're gridding in something like 2 1/2, don't grid it in like this, because this one looks like it's 21 over 2. A correct way of doing it would be 5 over 2 or 2.5. So that's basically how you do grid-in problems, or how you grid them in. And so we're given g of x is 2 plus x over x. And so what is the value of g of 8? And so for this one, we would just plug in 8 for x. So 2 plus 8 over 8. So that's 10 over 8. Which when simplified is 5 over 4. And we would just bubble this in. You could also bubble in 1.25 instead. These are both acceptable answers. 5 over 4 or 1.25. All right, question 17. It gives us the equation of a line. We have y equals negative 8x plus 7, and it asks for a line perpendicular to line H. So parallel lines are like this, and perpendicular lines are like this, where they intersect. And so this one specifically asks for the slope And so if this one's is 8, then the one for the perpendicular would be like this, or 1/8. It's just the inverse of whatever the slope of this one is what the slope of the perpendicular line would be. So the inverse of -8x, which is just 1/8. You just switch the sign, so it becomes negative to positive, and then you just do 1 over that number, which is 1/8. So 17 would be 1/8. Or you could also bubble in 0.125. Question 18, we're given a system of equations, and it's asking us for the value of x. So we're gonna try solving this using the other method. So we need to have one of the variables have the same amount. So we take x plus 2y equals 11 and multiply this entire equation by 3. So we get 3x plus 6y equals 33. And the other equation is 3x plus 3y equals 24. And then you can subtract this equation. So 3x minus 3x is 0. 6y minus 3y is 3y. And 33 minus 24 is 9. And you have 3y equals 9. Divide both sides by 3. Y equals 3. And ask for the value of x. So we just plug in. So x plus 2y equals 11. X plus 2 times 3 equals 11. X plus 6 equals 11. We'd subtract 6 from both sides, which would give us x equals 5. So the answer to that would be 5. Give me a minute. I'll give you a minute to solve this.
Can you move it a little bit because the right hand side is cut? Yeah.
Okay. So for this one, we're given the volume of 2 different rectangular prisms. And we have that A is similar to prism B. So if we remember, similar is like that. Or never mind, that's a horrible drawing, but whatever. And the longest side of A corresponds to the longest side of rectangular prism B. So let's draw these. So this is prism A, and then this is prism B. And so it says the longest side of A, which would be this, corresponds to the longest side of B, which would be that. And so it gives us the volume of the two in cubic meters. And it says the length of the longest side of prism A is 6 meters. So we know that this is 6. What is the length of the longest side of rectangular prism B? Right, and so what you do is you take the volume and you divide it, so 96, and you divide it by 6 for this longest side, and that'll get you 16. So 16 is the area of this square in this rectangular prism, which would get you side lengths of 4 and 4. When you divide that out, or that. And so this question says that they are similar. So every single side is scaled down at the same rate. And so the volume for prism B is 12. So the best way to solve these type of problems is by plugging in. And so let's say the ratio is half. So you have this is 3 and this is 2 and 2. So that would be 4. 2 times 2 is 4 times 3 is 12, which is the same as what it says for the volume of rectangular prism B, meaning that the ratio that they used is half, and it also means that the length that the length of this side is half of the whatever the length is for A, which would make this 3. So the answer would be 3. All right, question 20. I'll give you a minute. Okay, and so for this one, we're essentially just asked to use the quadratic formula, or at least that's the only way you'd get 5 plus square root of a number. So the quadratic formula is negative b plus or minus square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. And so in the original equation, we have x squared minus 10x plus 14 equals 0. A equals 1, because that's a 1x squared essentially. B is negative 10, because that's the term for this. And C is 14. And so plugging this in into this equation gets you negative and negative 10 plus or minus the square root of negative 10 squared minus 4 times 1 times 14 all over 2 times 1. Gets you 10 plus or minus square root of 100 minus 56 all over 2, which gets you square root of 44, 10 plus or minus over 2. And so now, as you can see, in the question it says x equals 5 plus root n. So we have to somehow get rid of this divided by 2. And it's only asking us for the positive, so we can, there's no plus or minus, it's just plus. And so to do this, we have to remove a 2 from this square root. So how do we get rid of a 2? Well, we'll do 4 times 11, the square root of 4 times 11, which is basically the same thing as square root of 44. And so the square root of 4 times 11 can also be rewritten as square root of 4 times square root of 11, which we can rewrite square root of 4 as 2 root 11. And so we have 10 plus or minus 2 root 11 over 2. And then we can divide 10 by 2 and 2 by 2. And we get 5 plus or minus root 11. And it asks, what is the value of n? N would be 11. You have a question?
Wait, where did you get the square root of 44?
Okay, so we have square root of 100 minus 56, right? Did you get that?
Yes. Oh, never mind, I see now.
Which 100 minus 56 is 44. Okay, is that it? Any other questions? All right, then if not, I guess we can start on a few calculator questions. Okay.
Also, Pushya, I would like them to know, ask if they want to change it to an hour or 1.5 hour is okay, because if they think that it's too long, we can change it to an hour instead of 1.5 hour. Let us know, please. And I suppose for the calculator sections, you must have got the approved calculators from the College Board that they have mentioned in their website. You can go ahead, Pushya.
Okay.
We'll end the session in another 15 minutes, okay?
Okay. Anyway, so for these questions, you are allowed a calculator. So if you have one, you can use it for these. So for question 1, it says humans begin REM sleep in 90 minutes. How many seconds after falling asleep do humans begin REM sleep? So we have 90 minutes. And we know that 1 minute is 60 seconds. So in our calculator, we would just do
Pusha, are you going to share your calculator as well? I mean, for them to.
Yeah.
Okay.
So what we would just do is 90 times 60 in our calculator, which, there we go. So we just do 90 times 60, which gets us 5,400. But a lot of these questions you can do without a calculator. So instead of doing 90 times 60, just do 9 times 6, which is 54, and add 2 zeros. So 5,400, which is just B. And surprisingly, most of the questions on a calculator second you can do without a calculator. Question 2. Function g is defined by g of x equals 4x minus 2. What is the value of g of -3? This is just a normal function question. So using the normal function rules, we would just plug in -3 for x. So 4 times -3 minus 2. That's -12 minus 2. That's -14, which is just answer choice D. Question 3. We have line segment ABC. We have segment AB as being X and segment BC as being 20. And we know the length of line BC is 2 times the length of AB. Well, if BC is 2 times the length of AB, then that means AB has to be 20 divided by 2, or 10. And so it asks, which equation represents this situation, which is segment AC. So we know that BC is 2 times the length of AB, so 2 times X, because X is AB, equals 20, which actually corresponds to D. Remember, when it says represent this situation, it's asking for X in this situation. It's not asking for the length of AC. If it was asking for the length of AC, it would be 3x or 30. But it didn't ask for that. Question 4. I'll give you a minute to solve this. All right, so for this one is grouper. So in word problems involving groups, we're told how long it takes groups of a certain size to complete a job and how long of a group of a different size. And so for this one, we're given that Jeremy sweeps 12 square yards a minute. And we're given Eric sweeps 16 square yards a minute. And it asks if they sweep for 5 minutes, how much greater does Eric sweep than Jeremy? So we have to just do 5 times these numbers. 5 times 12, which gets us Jeremy as doing 60 square yards. And we have Eric as 16 times 5, which is 80 square yards. And ask how much greater of an area does Eric sweep than Jeremy? We just have 80 minus 60, which is 20, which would get us an answer choice of A. Okay, question 5. So which expression is equivalent to x to the 4th times 3x squared plus 9x minus 8. So you just distribute normally. So this would just be, or I'll give you a minute to solve it. Okay, so for these, you just add the exponents. Or when you're having x's and all that, so 3x to the 4 plus 2 plus 9x to the first plus 4 minus 8x to the 0th plus 4, because 8x to the 0th is just 8, which is where I got that from, which gets us 3x to the 6th plus 9x to the 5th minus 8x to the 4th, which gets us answer choice B. All right, question number 6.
After 6, Pusha, we shall end the session. Okay.
All right, I'll give you a minute to solve it. Okay, so for this one, it's just the normal slope formula, y equals mx plus b. And if you remember, the b is just the y-intercept, so it would just be -4, and x would be 0, so 0, -4, which would make 6b.
Do you want to finish till 10th so that we can continue with the next session?
Okay.
Yeah, let's do that.
I don't think we're gonna finish till 10, but okay.
Okay, then it's okay. We can end it. That's fine. If anyone has any other questions, you can let us know over here and we can edit the content and the way he teaches. There's a link in the chat which has the questions. If you want to download it, and you can do it during the week time. And if you have any other questions, you can ask him next week.
So are there any like other like things we can work on other than this packet?
This is like we just going to go over the questions that were asked in the SAT exams in the recent years, and we'll go through those papers.
Okay,
Yeah, so these are just old SAT papers, or not old. These were like 2021 or 2022 SAT papers, like official SATs that were released. That's why
Oh.
we're just going through these.
okay.
So once so next week also what we'll do once we finish this, we'll again share another link with the next SAT question paper, and you have to like solve the papers of the other session that was there. Like this is March, I think. The next will be like maybe October, and then the next will be like maybe March, something like that.
Oh, okay. I see.
And I would also like to know, I mean, is the time okay, or you want to reduce the time to an hour, or this is okay?
I think 1.5 hours is fine.
Okay. Yeah, how about others? I mean, no one is talking. I mean, let us know so that we can edit it as per your convenience.
Yeah, 1.5 hours is fine.
Fine. Okay.
1.5 is fine.
Okay, then push solve the 7th one, and then we'll end the session.
Okay. And so question 7, it says so this one's a statistic question. There's a data analysis. With data analysis types of questions on the SAT, there's many things you want to look for. You want to look for the title. What is the X and Y values? What is independent and dependent variables, units, and slope? And read the last sentence first, which is generally the question. So the last sentence is, what is the probability to the nearest 100th of selecting a school in San Diego County? So it says, a public middle school will be selected at random from the 2 counties. So we don't care about elementary and high school. We only care about middle schools. We're given that we're only going to select middle schools. So their total is 587. And what is the probability of selecting one in San Diego County, which is 165? And you just do these two proportions. So 165 or 587, which we can just put into the calculator. Which gets us 0.28109, which rounded to the nearest 100th is just 0.28, which is C. I think that's it for question 7. Any questions?
No.
Uh-huh.
Okay, then. Thank you, everybody, for joining us. Pusha, you can stop the share if you want. And we'll see you again next week on Sunday, 5 o'clock.
Okay.
Mhm.
Thank you.
I hope this session was okay. And if you have any other suggestions, you can always email us at India House.
I thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Bye-bye.
thank you.
Bye-bye.